Before the Avengers, before the Fantastic Four, and even before Spider-Man, there was another superhero story taking shape. Audiences were about to be captured for well over a decade with the X-Men. This is Marvel In Memoriam.
With great power comes great responsibility.
What more could I lose?
I am the X-Men.
Avengers!
I love you 3000.
Welcome back to Marvel In Memoriam, brought to you by the Fandom Memorandum. Today's topic, the X-Men Trilogy. The first movie opens in a World War II concentration camp. Here we meet young Eric Lencher, aka Magneto, who is learning to use his mutant abilities. In a moment of fear and anger as he's being separated from his parents, he uses his magnetism to bend a gate, showing how powerful he is, and also setting the tone for this feared minority mindset against mutants. We jump forward and encounter another mutant named Rogue. Now, Rogue, her ability is whenever she makes skin contact with someone, it drains their life force. Because of this, she's afraid to be intimate and to be around the people she loves. So she runs away. She ends up running into Wolverine, who also is a mutant. His abilities are, he has an adamantium skeleton with these claws that he can engage at any time, as well as hyper regeneration. Now, they form this reluctant bond with Logan being kind of the grumpy older brother figure in her life, and they end up making their way to a place of safety called Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. Here, Rogue is integrated as a student, and Wolverine is taken as kind of a mentee figure under the wing of Charles Xavier. Now, Charles believes in peaceful coexistence between mutants and humans, but Magneto, who is now an older gentleman, he does not. He believes the mutants are superior to humans, that we are the next step in evolution. So, as things are starting to ramp up, we meet the rest of the X-Men, and that's Cyclops, Storm, Jean Grey, and a few others. And Jean Grey, we first encounter her in front of a board of U.S. senators. A specific U.S. senator is pushing a mutant registration act. They want to establish a list to know everyone who is a mutant and what their abilities are. So now, going back to Xavier and Magneto, they represent opposing ideologies. Xavier, like we said, is coexistence, and Magneto is mutant superiority. So he wants to protect mutant kind, but through dominance. So Magneto decides to build a machine that will mutate world leaders. He believes that by doing this, he can force them into being more accepting of their cause. He uses this machine, but it ends up draining his abilities. Later, he realizes that Rogue has the ability to drain mutant powers all on her own, and that she can absorb those powers permanently. So he decides to capture her and use her as a battery to power the machine safely. Now, he establishes this Brotherhood of Mutants, consisting of a few prominent characters, including Mystique and Toad and Sabretooth. We eventually find ourselves at the Statue of Liberty. Magneto activates his machine atop the statue, and the X-Men arrive to stop him. Wolverine and Cyclops fight Sabretooth, and Jean and Storm help coordinate. Wolverine saves Rogue, nearly dying in the process, but his healing factor saves him. The movie ends with Magneto being imprisoned in a plastic cell, no metal for him to magnetize, and Senator Kelly, the senator that proposed the Mutant Registration Act, who has since been turned into a mutant from the machine, ends up dying, showing that Magneto's plan is flawed. Rogue stays at the school, and Wolverine leaves to search more for his past, which he has no memory of. So, pretty great movie. I love this movie. I mean, this is an incredible show. It came out in the year 2000, and it was directed by Bryan Singer and released by 20th Century Fox. And at this point, I believe the only Marvel movie that had any sort of acclaim before this were the Blade movies. So it's pretty interesting to go from this really dark Blade movie to still somewhat serious, but much more approachable to general audiences superhero team-up movie in the X-Men. It was really cool how they wanted to make these superheroes still feel grounded and believable, but they also wanted to move away from the campy cartooniness of like Batman and Robin, for example. It's also cool how they lean into real-world themes like prejudice and fear and politics. Plus, we get much more serious performances. Now, let's talk about the casting. Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, I can't picture anybody else in the role. I think that is so perfect. Even though in the comics, Wolverine is actually quite a short fella, but Hugh Jackman, he's a big guy. But his acting chops are so perfect that you don't even really care about that. And he wasn't even the original choice. I mean, he was actually cast pretty late in the role, but I'm so glad they did. Then we get Patrick Stewart as Professor X, and that is just a dream casting. I mean, he's already a big name from his roles in Star Trek at the time, and so that was just wonderful casting. Then with Ian McKellen as Magneto, this added a real gravitas to the character, which I think is completely necessary. We definitely need that from someone like him. I mean, he's a leader and almost like a philosopher in a way, and it comes off beautifully. Now, I also got to talk about James Marsden Cyclops. We'll talk about him more in the next couple movies, but I think he is incredible. I love him as a character. I'm so excited to see more of him in Avengers Doomsday. Spoilers, but there is already a trailer out for it, so hopefully you've seen it. But yeah, all in all, a great movie. So this movie had an estimated budget of approximately $75 million, so actually lower than many of the films that'll come after it. And it ended up having a worldwide box office of approximately $296 million. So a great profit for the company. And it had good critical and audience reception. So both the critics and the audience loved it. So obviously it would be a no-brainer to get a sequel. And of course we do. But before we move on, I do want to just mention, I mean, if we don't have this movie, obviously Blade started it off. We talked about that in the Blade episode. Blade kicked all of this off, but this movie, the X-Men, was an actual proof of concept for every superhero team-up show that would come after it. Fantastic Four, the Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy, even as late as Thunderbolts, it all owes a little something to the X-Men. Now, 3 years later, in 2003, we get the long-awaited sequel, X2. This movie opens following a mutant named Nightcrawler. Now, this mutant, although the audience doesn't know it right at the time of this scene, is being manipulated and controlled with this substance to attack the White House. His abilities are very cool in that he can teleport to anything, any place that he can see. And it's a crazy cool scene. Great action. So, we get a military scientist named William Stryker who gains approval from the government to start targeting mutants. He secretly leads an anti-mutant agenda tied to his past experiments. We actually even find out later on that he's directly tied to Wolverine and the fact that Wolverine has an adamantium skeleton and not just normal bones like he was born with. Stryker ends up launching a surprise attack on Xavier's school. Students are captured and chaos erupts. Wolverine protects the kids and escapes with Rogue, Iceman, and Pyro. The X-Men realize Stryker is a bigger threat than expected. They form a temporary alliance with Magneto and Mystique. Their goal? To stop Stryker before he wipes out mutant kind. The team travels to Alkali Lake, which is the Weapon X facility, the birthplace of the modern Wolverine, the Wolverine with an adamantium skeleton. Wolverine discovers that Stryker was responsible for his adamantium and his memories were manipulated. This deepens Wolverine's identity struggle. So the X-Men and Magneto's teams infiltrate the facility at Alkali Lake, and they begin to dispatch of the soldiers there. There's a massive battle. Nightcrawler, who has since joined the X-Men and is free of his control. He helps with mobility. Jean Grey and Storm, they're supporting, and Magneto turns the tables. He alters Stryker's plan to target humans instead of mutants. In the end, the dam at Alkali Lake collapses, and the base begins to flood. So Jean Grey uses her powers to hold back the water and ends up sacrificing her life. In this moment, we get an incredible scene where Cyclops, who is Jean's boyfriend, even though Jean and Wolverine also share some romantic tension, but she's loyal to Cyclops, we get this scene of pure emotion where the two of them are coming to terms with the fact that this woman they love, Jean, has sacrificed it all to save their lives, and it's beautifully done. Stryker is left behind and killed by the flooding. The mutants are temporarily safe, and the government begins reconsidering its stance. So, in a little final tease, we see this fiery bird shape underneath the water, and we see it kind of glide under the surface, and then the movie ends. It's very interesting because obviously that is a reference to the Phoenix or the Phoenix Force. So, this movie, if the first movie is an utter classic, this movie's a masterpiece. Again, it came out in 2003. This is Bryan Singer again directing under 20th Century Fox. And this is like the perfect sequel. Bigger stakes, more characters, more action, but it doesn't sacrifice the emotion of the story, the core elements that made the first X-Men so great. The budget of this movie was approximately $110 million, which is quite the jump from the first film. But the box office was approximately $407 million worldwide. So again, another smash. And I can see why. This movie is incredible. I love the serious tone. I love the addition of Nightcrawler. I love the deeper backstory for Wolverine through William Stryker. It's all great. Now, some criticisms. Cyclops, I do believe, is underused. He's one of the best characters they have, and throughout this entire trilogy, he doesn't get enough screen time. And it is a shame, but we're hopeful for the future. This movie also helps set up a great tradition of epic and even better than original superhero movie sequels, up there with the likes of Spider-Man 2, Captain America the Winter Soldier, The Dark Knight, just to name a few. The third movie opens with the introduction of the mutant cure. There's a pharmaceutical company that has figured out a way to synthesize a cure or a power blocker for the mutants that will essentially turn them back into normal human beings, whatever that means. The source of the cure is a young mutant boy known as Leech. Mutant kind becomes divided on the matter. Some mutants want the cure, like Rogue, for example, and others see it as a threat to their identity. Calling back to that Phoenix under the water in X2, Jean Grey returns. She has evolved into the Phoenix, an unstable and immensely powerful personality. Her powers are now vastly amplified and emotionally uncontrollable. Professor X admits that he put mental barriers in Jean Grey's mind to hopefully prevent her from going down this road. Magneto sees Jean as a weapon and the key to mutant dominance. Now, this happens off screen, but it is implied in this meeting between Jean and Cyclops that she actually kills him, and it's not discovered until later on in the movie by Wolverine and Storm, who find Cyclops' glasses on the side of the lake. Also, they find Jean as well. Later, when Jean is confronted by Charles Xavier, she loses control and ultimately kills him as well, in a very shocking scene. So this establishes the Phoenix as the central threat of the movie. Magneto forms a large mutant war, expanding his brotherhood. He declares war on humanity over the cure and plans to destroy the facility producing it, and all the while manipulating Jean as his weapon. So Wolverine is struggling because he loves Jean and he wants her to be safe, but he's seeing all these reckless things that she's doing under Magneto's manipulation. And Rogue is struggling because she wants to be a part of mutant kind, but she hates her powers, and so she ultimately chooses to take the cure so that she can have that intimacy in life. And Storm has to step into a leadership role because now that Cyclops and Charles Xavier are dead, someone's got to lead the mutants. In a climactic scene, Magneto lifts the Golden Gate Bridge out off the water, breaking it and then setting it down as a new bridge to Alcatraz, where they wage the final act of the movie. So now we get the battle between the X-Men and Magneto's army. During the fight, someone's able to inject Magneto with the cure, and he loses his powers. Mutants on both sides are cured during the battle. During the climax, Jean fully loses control as the Phoenix. She begins disintegrating everything around her, and the only person who can get close to her is Wolverine, because he's able to regenerate. So as he's walking through this mist of chaos, and he's losing skin and clothing as it's starting to just disintegrate off his body, but then also instantly re-healing as he continues to walk, he realizes what he has to do. And in the end, he ultimately decides to kill her for the greater good of both mutant and humankind. In the end, the Phoenix is stopped and the day is won. It's hinted at that Magneto is regaining his abilities slowly but surely despite being cured, and that Charles Xavier actually survived. He was able to put his consciousness into a brain-dead patient. Now, this movie had a lot to juggle. It was directed by Brett Ratner because Bryan Singer had to go work on Superman Returns. And yeah, it had some struggles. It was 2006, so another 3 years, and still under Fox. And there were a lot of things that Brett had to tie up. Bryan had been building toward a more developed Dark Phoenix storyline, and when he left, the project was reworked quickly under Ratner. So there were lots of script changes, a huge shift in tone, and less build-up for major story arcs. So the film really struggles because it's balancing two different plots. it's balancing the Dark Phoenix saga, but it's also balancing the mutant cure storyline, and that's pretty hard to do simultaneously. In the comics, each of these is its own standalone arc, so squishing them into one movie, it was a bold choice. Now, me personally, I still really like this movie. I think it's a great way to end the trilogy, and it doesn't taint the trilogy at all. I think it's really great. It might be kind of similar to the Spider-Man trilogy, where the first two are like excellent, and the third one, it has its problems, but it's still pretty good. The estimated budget for this was $210 million, and at the time that this came out, this was one of the, if not the most expensive movie ever made. Now, it still was able to get $460 million at the box office, so it still got its money back and more, but definitely not as big of a jump as the first and second movies. Now, the critics, they were pretty low on this movie. It was mixed, but it was mostly negative. Now, audiences enjoyed the action and the spectacle, and Hugh Jackman delivers a great performance here, but there were definitely some failings, especially with the side characters like Cyclops or Iceman. We definitely would have liked to have seen more from the characters we've been following for 3 movies. Regardless, it still has a positive legacy, and there's a lot to love from this movie. And again, it doesn't taint the other 2 movies. These are great movies, and it's a pretty solid trilogy overall. Now, we got to get into our favorite segment, of course. We must assume doom. But first, spoiler warning. Spoilers. 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 We good? Okay, so I believe it's in X2 that we see this computer screen with a list of names on here. And now, you don't have to pay too much attention to this list right now. There's lots of very fascinating names on there. But first, I want to respectfully call out Eric Voss. He recently put out a video where he was talking about why he's confused that Gambit is going to be with the X-Men in Avengers Doomsday. He felt like it didn't work, and he feels like it's a really weird retcon. Well, it's not. If you look at this list from X2, you see listed on here on this mutant registry, you see Remy LeBeau, and Remy LeBeau is none other than Gambit. And so my theory is that at one point or another, Gambit was either pruned just like normal, or because Gambit doesn't have his memories, he talks about growing up in the void and whatnot. My more comic-y theory is He Who Remains, when he was reorganizing the timeline, for whatever reason, he needed Gambit to be removed from the X-Men timelines that he allowed to survive. So he removed him and stored him in the void and changed his memories so that he only remembers being in the void. That's my theory. Now, for those of you who are wondering, what the heck is Gambit? What are you talking about? Well, in Deadpool and Wolverine, yet again in the void, alongside Blade, Elektra, X-23, Deadpool, Wolverine, we got Channing Tatum, Gambit. Now, Channing has tried to play Gambit for years, and so it was really great to see him in the role and to see that he's going to be continuing in that role in Avengers Doomsday, no less. So he's going to be in an Avengers movie as an X-Men, doing something unprecedented, and I couldn't be more excited. And so, no hate to you, Eric Voss, but yeah, this is not some sort of retcon. This isn't some sort of hard-to-gather thing. He's been there all along. How does that apply to Doom? Well, Gambit is pretty dang powerful. We've heard from the leaks, or I guess the summaries of the Avengers Doomsday trailer shown at CinemaCon, that they even showed a glimpse of Gambit fighting Shang-Chi, which that fight sounds so cool. So I'm just really excited to see the role that he plays, and he was really great in Deadpool and Wolverine. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Pretty awesome. Now, let's also talk about Cyclops. So you're probably wondering how this is all going to tie in, and we're actually not going to explain it in this video, so you'll have to wait till we get to our Days of Future Past video. But spoiler alert, Cyclops is alive. Not from any sort of crazy stuff like with Charles Xavier or anything that happened in this movie. So it happens in another movie. Again, Days of Future Past, go check it out. But I am so excited to see Cyclops operate in Doomsday. He's a leader. He knows how to lead. I mean, I wouldn't say he's as good as Captain America, but he's pretty dang close. Like, those are some of the best leaders in the comics. So I hope that they give him his due. I hope he's able to do some really cool things. It's been awesome to see him in the comic accurate outfits. So we got a lot of great things to look forward to. And for the X-Men at large, Doom would want to use them because they're so powerful. So if he can manipulate them or get them to do his dirty work or whatever that may be, that is a smart thing to do. In short, the X-Men movies are great. They're timeless, and they really set up everything in Marvel's future, from Spider-Man to Fantastic Four, continued Fox projects all the way in to the MCU, and I can't be happier about it. So, big shout out to Bryan Singer. Thanks for delivering us the X-Men. If you like what you saw here, please like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.